Well, hello and welcome to Pontiac Enchanté and our virtual concert hall. My name is Carson Becke. I am the series artistic director. A particular welcome today, or this evening, I guess, to our viewers over the ocean in Great Britain and on the continent in Germany. It's a great pleasure to have you with us today. One of the major attractions to coming to concerts here is the physical setting, is the geography that we find ourselves in this very beautiful part of Canada. So for those of you that haven't been here before, we wanted to give you that introductory clip just as a way of kind of putting yourself in this place. So we're sitting right at the edge of the Eardley Escarpment, which is the edge of the Canadian Shield. It's actually a former we're on a former seabed. That was formerly the cliffs around the edge of the Champlain Sea. So that gives you a sense of where this space is. And we feel very fortunate to be able to be here in these wonderful surroundings to make music. You might hear some horse-like sounds during this concert. Do not be alarmed. There are no sort of off-camera horses in the hall with us causing trouble. But this concert facility is actually on the second floor of a horse barn. So right below our floor here are 25 horses. And occasionally they contribute their own musical noises to our concerts. So just a disclaimer that if you hear horse noises, everything is going to plan and nothing is actually wrong. So welcome to all of you again. You're all watching our concert this afternoon or this evening on our virtual concert hall platform on the Pontiac Enchanté website. Some of you are familiar with this platform and you know the features that are available to you as you use it. Others may not be. So I just want to take you through the page that you're on right now and give you an idea of some of the things that you can do on that page to make your concert experience more enjoyable. So first of all, on the left-hand side of the media viewer, there's a button saying Download Concert Program. So if you click that, a separate window will appear in your web browser with a PDF of today's concert program. On the second page of that program, you can read Paul's biography and also my biography. I would particularly suggest that you download that program for today's concert because quite a few of the pieces, especially in the first set that we play, have distinct titles, and those titles really lend themselves to the pieces and I think will enhance the way that you listen to them. So I would recommend downloading our concert program for today's concert. Second of all, you'll notice on the right-hand side of the media viewer, there's a button saying Donate. We are running these concerts right now for free. You're able to view them without paying, but our series right now is surviving because of our donations. So for the last live stream concerts that we've run, we've done very well on donations. We really appreciate your support and help in allowing us to continue this series. But we would ask today, if you're watching this concert, to please donate whatever you're able to. I've given some suggestions. So $30 Canadian is the price of viewing a concert here in person. $20 is a student price, but please give whatever you can. On the media viewer itself, if you hover your mouse button or your mouse clicker over it and go down to the right-hand corner, there's a little square box. If you click on that box, that will send the picture to full screen, so you'll get a much more immersive concert experience. Don't be afraid to juggle around the volume controls either. If you find the sound too quiet or too loud, that's something that you can control, and that's on the left-hand side, left-hand bottom corner of the media viewer. There's a little thing you can drag back and forth to make the volume louder or quieter. So those are the things that are available to you, and we hope that this virtual concert is enjoyable for you today. We know it's not the same thing as being at a concert in person, but at the moment it's the best that we can do, and I think actually it provides some things that in-person concerts can't really provide. A few of those things being unique ways of watching concerts and camera angles that give you things that you can see that you wouldn't really be able to see if you were at a concert live. So actually, Tate, would you mind showing our audience today the camera angles that we have available? So we've got, of course, the camera that you're watching me speak from. There's a higher up camera, which looks down at the piano. There's a camera looking very closely at Paul and his cello, which gives you sort of a very close-up view of what's happening on that instrument. And then there's a camera that just shows the room in general. So it's almost like if you were at a hockey game. If you're watching a hockey game live, it's exciting to be there in person, but you don't really get those up-close cameras that you get if you watch the game on TV. If you're in Britain, you probably don't watch hockey games, so I guess we can replace hockey with football or tennis or something like that. Before every concert that we host here in person, I thank all of our sponsors. And right now, it's even more important that I do so because this series really would not be up and running now were it not for the support of our sponsors. So back in March, when the pandemic lockdowns began here in Canada, I got in touch with all of our series sponsors and said, okay, we don't really know what the series is going to look like. At the moment, we can't do anything. Please let me know what you would like to do. And every single one of them got back in touch saying that they were willing to continue their support and that they wanted to keep supporting the series and make sure that we could do whatever we were able to this year. And so I'm so grateful that they put that faith in us and our series. And it's really thanks to them that we're able to do this that we're doing today. So I would just like to go through the list and say a personal thank you to each of our sponsors. So I'd like to start today with Miss Dasha Schenkman, who I believe is watching this evening from London, England, from her home over in London. And Dasha and I have been in touch for a long time. We were emailing about when she could possibly come and watch a concert here in person. And somehow, despite the fact that world travel restrictions are in place, the past two concerts and our live streams have enabled Dasha to be with us as much as possible. So Dasha, welcome back to the Venturing Hills Concert Studio, and thank you so much to you for your support. I'd also like to say a big thank you to Marg Campbell, who's a very generous donor to the series. Marg comes to almost every concert that we host in person. And of course, that's not possible right now. Marg, I know you're watching today. I think you watched yesterday as well. So I really appreciate your interest and your support for the series. Another big thank you to Mark Rondell from the RBC Rondell Wealth Management Group. Mark was particularly excited about the idea of being able to watch these concerts from his couch. I called him out on that in our first live stream concert, but Mark, I believe you might be watching today, so I hope you enjoy this couch concert experience again today, and thank you so much for your support for this series since the very beginning, since we started doing concerts here in 2009. A big thank you to the Norton Rose Fulbright law firm for their support of the series. Also a thank you to Desjardins Caisse Populaire for their support. And finally, a big thank you to Bob and Sandra Barber, who live locally here in Luskville and have been supporters of this series ever since they moved here. Bob and Sandra, I know that live stream concerts are not your favorite thing on earth, but thanks to your support, we're able to do concerts here, and I hope that you're enjoying this from just down the road in your living rooms. So again, a huge thank you to all of our 2020 season sponsors. Putting on concerts when it's not a global pandemic is a challenge. There's lots of things that have to happen for concerts to work successfully, and there's many people that are involved at many different levels that make these events possible. Putting on concerts during a global pandemic is a different story, and there's an even larger quantity of people and people doing different things that have to happen for these concerts to happen. So I'd just like to say a special thank you to a few people and a few organizations that have done particular things that have allowed us to improve this concert experience for you and to put on these live stream shows in general. So first of all, you'll notice that I'm very well lit. You're not going to see these lights because they're behind the cameras, but I'm very grateful to the Mill Road Community Center in Old Chelsea for lending us their excellent lighting rig for these concerts. Mill Road puts on a wonderful series of both folk and classical concerts and runs a great series of community events. I can't wait to get back there both to play and enjoy their music when the pandemic is over and they're able to welcome back live audiences. But for now, thank you so much to Mill Road for lending us this rig and allowing us to be a little better well lit than we were before. You'll also know that my voice is coming through very clearly, and when you start listening to the music, you'll notice that the sound quality is excellent. And I would like to say a huge thank you to our engineer, Ross Murray, who's been working with us since our live stream concerts back in October. Ross brings a huge amount of professional expertise, knowledge, and great equipment to our setup here. So I'm so grateful to Ross for the time and energy that he's put into this to make the audio experience for these concerts the best that it possibly could be. So a huge thank you to Ross for all of his work. The piano that I'm playing will be extremely well tuned, and I would like to just acknowledge and thank Troy Scharf for all the work he does in making sure that this instrument is always well taken care of. Troy has literally been at this venue at any time of the day and night. If I've said to him the day before a concert, look, there's a note that's giving me problems, he'll do anything to make sure that that is fixed before the concert. So I'm so grateful to him for his dedication to making sure that this instrument is always at top quality and for the wonderful work that he does. So a huge thank you to Troy Scharf for his care of our piano. You're also not going to see this person today because he's the person making sure that you can see us performing. But I'd like to say a big thank you to Tate Becke, my co-director for this series, and my brother. Tate is in charge of the cameras today, so he's the one flipping around all the different camera angles for you. He's also managing our live stream, so that we have sort of a recording booth at the back of this facility where Tate is sitting, watching us play, and then manipulating the cameras, making sure that the stream is working and adjusting everything on that side of things. So a huge thank you to Tate for all he's doing there and for the knowledge and expertise he brings in that field to this event. And finally, just another big thank you to my parents, Debbie and Peter, for allowing us to use this facility, which is on their property, for these concerts. It's one thing to bring a lot of people to your property when it's not a pandemic, but again, during a global pandemic, it becomes much more complicated and it's risky to have people come to your property. So I really appreciate them trusting that I'm not going to screw this up and trusting that everybody that's coming here is following all of the protocols that we have in place. And so thank you, a huge thank you to them for allowing us to use this wonderful facility. So thank you to all of the above people for making this possible. If you were here at a concert in person, I would suggest that all of you, if you are not already a member of our emailing list, fill out a little form at the back of the hall to become part of our list. That's by far the best way to stay in touch with us. However, that's one thing that's much easier now that you're viewing online. So you'll notice at the top of your window, there's a little orange button that says join our emailing list. If you're not already on our emailing list, that's the way that we spread most of the information about these concerts, about what's coming up next, and importantly, if you're in this area, whether we're going to be able to sell live tickets or not. We usually don't know that during this pandemic until just a few days before the concert. So I would encourage everybody, wherever you are, to please sign up for that mailing list, and then you'll be kept up to date in terms of what concerts we have coming up, and also quite shortly what the 2021 season is going to look like here. So I'd encourage you all to join that list now. If you're on Facebook, you can also follow our Facebook page. Just search Pontiac Enchanté Concert Series. We also post updates there along with some pictures. And again, we keep people in the loop in terms of what we're going to be able to do for our next live performances. So those are the two best ways to stay in our circuit and our loop. And we encourage anybody that's not on one of those two platforms to join up now. So all that leaves me to do now is to introduce my partner in crime this evening, Paul Marleyn. Paul is British. He's from London. He was the principal cellist of the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra before moving to Canada in the 90s, where he worked at the University of Manitoba as professor of cello. While in Manitoba, he started up the Agassiz Chamber Music Festival, and he's since moved to Ottawa. He's now professor of cello at the University of Ottawa. So it's a huge pleasure for me to get to work with Paul today. And Paul, thank you so much for playing in our series for the first time. It's wonderful to have you here.
So I'm delighted to be here this afternoon, and for those in Europe this evening. It's a great pleasure playing in this beautiful venue and with Carson and working with Ross and Tate. It's a wonderful team they have here. The first piece we'd like to play, Six Studies in English Folk Song by Ralph Vaughan Williams. It's a beautiful opener. It's of course a study of 6 English folk songs. In fact, Vaughan Williams recorded at the source these folk songs on folk song collecting holidays in the British countryside in the 1920s. And he used these folk songs as the source material to elaborate, create these beautiful studies. The titles are quite evocative, and he treats the source material very much like Bela Bartok and Zoltan Kodály did when they went on their folk song collecting holidays in Romania and Transylvania and Hungary at around the same time. So this was something that many composers in Europe were doing. I guess it was a wonderful way to connect with one's folklore traditions and the earth that nourishes the arts, of course. So the 6 titles are Lovely on the Water as the first folk song. Second one is Spurn Point. Spurn Point is a point going out into the sea in Yorkshire. Then Van Diemen's Land, which was the popular name for Tasmania. Tasmania was a place that convicts were taken. British convicts were taken to be punished for their crimes, and in this song, the crime was poaching, rather draconian punishment for poaching. Then the next song is The Lady and the Dragon. Then she borrowed some of her mother's gold. And the final one is a very brisk, cheerful song to finish. As I walk over London Bridge, Vaughan Williams writes about this set of folk songs that they should be treated with love. So we will do our best to do that. So hope you enjoy 6.
Thank you very much. That was Ralph Vaughan Williams' 6 Studies in English Folk Song. We're going to continue our program now with Frank Bridge's Sonata in D minor for cello and piano. This is a bad pun, but I like to think about Frank Bridge as really a bridge of a composer between two very different compositional and worlds, two very different worlds in general. Bridge was born in the late 19th century, and his early music is very Victorian. Sounds a lot like Edward Elgar, a composer that I'm sure many of you will be familiar with. Just very, very lush, very thick harmonies, beautiful, long flowing melodies. And then his later music, I would bet a lot of money that if you were to listen to a piece by Frank Bridge written in the late 1930s versus a piece written by him around the year 1900, you would never guess that they were by the same composer. He went a completely different direction with his music. A major reason for this was the First World War. Bridge was a pacifist, was a real objector to the First World War, and it affected him deeply on a very deep psychological level. He sort of felt that what happened during the First World War changed the world for good, and he felt that the music that he wrote after the war needed to reflect that. There was no way that after a cataclysmic world event like that, you could just go back to life as normal. So his music sort of took a complete left-hand turn during those years, during the years of the First World War, and never went back to what it was before. The Cello Sonata is particularly interesting because it happened. He wrote it during the First World War, so it really is the crux of that transition point. He started the first movement in 1913, just before the war began, and he finished the piece in 1917. So he really wrote it through the first few years of the war. The first movement actually does quite a lot of the things that you would expect a very big romantic cello sonata to do. It has these wonderfully long, beautiful melodic themes. The cello sort of soars over the piano part. It's got a very tragic, very deep sort of sadness to it, but ultimately it is a very romantic movement. The second movement is not at all. I've heard that in early versions of this piece, Bridge was thinking about a 3 or even 4 movement sonata, which he then condensed into 2 movements, which is already unusual. Many sonatas written in the 19th century would have been in a very standard 3 or 4 movement pattern, but Bridge condensed his into just 2 movements. And the second movement is very fragmented. It contains almost like pieces of lots of other movements that sort of got shoved into this much smaller form. There's a very kind of bizarre, quirky section that sounds a bit like a sort of a small scherzo movement. There are these very elegiac, slow sections that certainly would have been a kind of slow movement. And then there's an ending which sort of sounds like a finale, but it's almost like he didn't let any of these fragments become a movement in their own right. They all sort of exist in this sort of strange fantasy form of the second movement. And as you'll notice, the harmonic language is very different as well. He does things with both the piano and the cello that are very dissonant, bordering on atonality, which the first movement doesn't suggest in any way. One moment that I'd like you to listen for, in particular in the second movement, the piano plays these extremely slow, quiet chords, and it creates kind of a moment of stasis. And on top of that bed of kind of complete stillness, the cello plays an extremely quiet, extremely beautiful melody that to me sounds a lot like a folk song, somewhat like some of the songs that you just heard by Vaughan Williams. And to me, this is just one of the most touching moments in music from this time, because there's this moment in time where everything stops. You hear almost like a memory of something that occurred a long time ago, and you can't quite put your finger on it, but you know that it went something like that. And as the cello plays that very haunting folk song, the piano surrounds it with these very quiet but very dissonant chords. And it's, if you think about this being written in the middle of the First World War, it's almost like looking back into a world that was, and realizing as you're looking back that it really never can be like that again. And I think that's sort of what this sonata sums up in total. So here is Frank Bridge's Cello Sonata in D minor. Thank you. Thank you very much. That was Frank Bridges' Cello Sonata in D minor. We're going to take a small break right now, but one of the interesting things to deal with these live stream concerts is how do you deal with the intermission? Because I think it's a lot to think that we're just going to play for 90 minutes nonstop, and I think also as a listener you need something in the way there. But just giving you a blank screen for 15 minutes is probably not ideal either. So something we've been doing since the start of the live stream concerts we've been putting on in September is we've been including an interview in the middle of each concert with somebody either playing in the concert, talking a bit about what they do as an artist, some of their interests, something about the program, or talking to people that are related to the program in another way. So in our last concert, we featured an interview with Dmitri Alexeyev, a Russian pianist who made the arrangement of Stravinsky's Firebird that we performed on 2 pianos. And today we have a very special guest for you. This is Professor David Strange of the Royal Academy of Music, who was Paul's cello teacher, and I also knew very well during my time as a student at the Royal Academy. So we introduce ourselves and David in the interview. So I'll leave you to that now, and we'll see you again here in 15 minutes. But for now, enjoy this interview with David Strange. Welcome everybody to this interview. You've just heard our performance of Frank Bridges' Cello Sonata. And before we play Benjamin Britten's Sonata in C for you, we have a very special guest with us today. Paul and I are very happy to welcome Professor David Strange, who is an emeritus professor of the cello at the Royal Academy of Music and has really done everything that you could do as a cellist in Britain. He was the principal cellist of the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra, of the London Philharmonic Orchestra, of the Covent Garden Opera House Orchestra, and was one of the founding members of the Nash Ensemble, which is still one of the premier chamber ensembles in Britain today. And David is joining us today from his house in Edinburgh. So David, welcome to Pontiac Enchanté, and in a way, welcome to Canada.
Thank you very much. Great pleasure. And wonderful to see you both again after all this time.
Yeah, in a way, this whole situation with distance between people and travel restrictions has kind of forced us to use other technologies and other means of communication. And in a way, I mean, this situation probably wouldn't have happened had our concert series been going on in normal times. So it's sort of a nice hidden opportunity that we're able to do this today.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
David, we wanted to ask you some questions. First of all, centered around Benjamin Britten, because of course Britten was one of the arguably the most important composer in Great Britain at the end of the 20th century. And in one of your many capacities that you worked as a cellist in London, you must have had some interactions with Britten. So could you maybe tell us a little bit about how you knew him and any memories you might have had of Benjamin Britten as a musician and as a person?
Well, I first played for Britain in 1965, which is a long time ago. And at that time, I'd started playing with the Philharmonia Orchestra. And in 1965, there was recording sessions of the Sinfonia da Requiem of Britten with him conducting. And I can remember clearly him working with the orchestra. That was the first time I came across him. And I was so much in awe of this great man. Because by this stage, he was coming towards the end. I think he died in 1963, was it? No. I
think 73 or 74, somewhere in there.
No, he died in 76, sorry.
Okay.
So all the big pieces had been more or less written, except for the Cello Symphony at this time. And he was just a wonderful person. You've all seen photographs of him. He was immaculate, with not a hair out of place and all that sort of thing. And that's the way he conducted. Really perfectly. And yet there was so much emotion in what he was doing. And he demanded the highest possible level of performance, even though he was totally friendly with the whole orchestra and got on Christian name terms. Especially, he knew all the English chamber orchestra at that time as personal friends.
Wow.
He was just a wonderful man. His musicality was so clear in what he was doing. And I played a few years later. I briefly joined the English Chamber Orchestra, and we recorded 2 Mozart symphonies with Ben. Mozart 40 first, and then 38. That was 1968, 69. And his Mozart was unbelievable. I can't ever remember anyone else coming close to it. And when he had that orchestra, which was his orchestra, it was just incredible. He did nothing. He stood there, and he certainly wasn't a maestro. You know, because so many conductors nowadays are maestros, but he was just an ordinary sort of chap who didn't want any special treatment, but music was oozing out of him. It was such a privilege.
Wow. How would you describe his rehearsal process? Like, was he very demanding with orchestras, or was he sort of happy to let them kind of play?
No, he was demanding, but in a way that he didn't seem to be.
Right.
Does that make sense? Some conductors, but no, he was always smiling and kind and whatever. He wanted everything right, no question, and would rehearse detail and all that if it wasn't. But generally speaking, he was thinking of the umbrella from the beginning to the end, you know?
David, I guess we look back at Britten as a seminal compositional voice of the 20th century. But of course, so many composers had the reception that their music wasn't always as enthusiastically received during their lifetime. I'm curious, what was your reaction to his music as it came out, and how did audiences and critics receive his music?
Well, as I said, I first met him in 1965. By which time he'd composed the majority of all the big pieces, the operas, symphony, whatever. And by that time, he was so well known in the country, and he was admired and loved and whatever. So I have no idea what happened before that. And the only 2 premieres I heard, I was still living in Ireland and not a student as yet, was in 1961, the Cello Sonata. And I heard that on the radio with him and Slava.
Oh, yeah.
I remember because thinking, my goodness, all these tricks. I thought, nobody else is ever going to be able to play these. You know? Whereas now everybody plays it, but in those days, nobody played it because it was considered too difficult.
Oh, you know? I agree, David. I don't think anybody can play it even these days. It's only Slava, just 1 or 2 people.
You can play it, yeah. But then the one which did cause an absolute sensation was the War Requiem from Coventry Cathedral in 1962. And that was quite something because of the forces and because of the Wilfred Owen poems. And I saw that on TV, and it was just magical, incredible. And wow. The reviews and the notices in the press about that was quite something. You know, that was such a special piece to him.
So you mentioned the Cello Sonata, which is just perfect. And of course, Slava Rostropovich and Britten were close personal friends. So this sonata was written for Rostropovich, I believe, as a kind of tribute and maybe celebration of their friendship, and also the incredible cello playing of Rostropovich. Yeah. Of course, one of the greatest cellists of all time, certainly of one of the greatest of the 20th century. Did you ever have a chance to work with Slava? Do you know him personally at all?
Oh, I know him personally. I knew him personally, but only by playing in the orchestra when he recorded and played concerts. And then at the times he came to EUIO, which was wonderful when he was conducting. And you know what EUYO was like. It was a 2-week rehearsal period and then concerts. And I was always in those days the one to be left into the second week, and I would stay and have to look after him. And you can imagine we had a lot of fun.
Well, there's so many crazy stories about him being a party animal and just never sleeping and just crazy.
Well, I'm sure there's a lot of truth in it, but I'm not going to say it.
I was also fortunate to spend a little bit of time with him towards the end of his life. But I wonder if you could tell us what it was like experiencing him kind of coming to London the first time, if you were in London at that time, and his performances, the impact he had on the cello world and the London world.
It was incredible, because early on in his career, as he did with the LSO, he performed every single cello concerto there was. And I think that was probably about I can't remember, but probably about 1965 or something. Okay. And that was quite a feat to go through everything.
Oh, that's when he played all the concertos in 9 days?
Something like that, yes.
Yeah, I heard about that. It sounded incredible. 27 concertos in 9 days.
Right. Yes, right.
Yeah. God. I wish I heard that.
Times 2 a day, it was just incredible.
Well, so I wanted to ask you about your relationship with the Cello Sonata specifically, and I'm guessing, have you played the piece yourself?
Oh, years ago. Yes, years ago.
And so you've played it, you've taught the piece. What, in your many years kind of living with the piece, what are some of your thoughts about it? Has teaching it changed your perspective on it at all?
Well, on the piece, no. For me, there is one very important thing about the Cello Sonata. In 1945, I think, he wrote Peter Grimes, the opera. Now, that opera, for me, is the finest opera written in the 20th century and one of the finest ever written. And one of the joys when I moved to Covent Garden Orchestra was that I did a couple of runs of that with Colin Davis conducting. And when I hear the Cello Sonata, when I played it, so much of that is from Peter Grimes.
Right.
And especially the slow movement, because in the opera, I'm sure you know it, but the townspeople are against Peter Grimes because he allegedly killed his apprentice. And that's the basis of the whole East Anglian story. And he got in such a state about all this that nobody would leave him alone, that he decided to go out to sea in his boat, a little boat. And he went out to sea, pulled the plug, and the boat sank with him. And the build up to this is incredible in Peter Grimes. And exactly the same thing happens in the Cello Sonata, the second movement. And I can always hear Peter Pears screaming like Peter Grimes when I hear that piece, or I used to play it in the slow movement. And that's really, I must have talked to Paul about this, but it's such a special moment. And what I say to all students, if you want to learn how to play this sonata, get a DVD of Peter Grimes.
So, David, of course, you well know that I had the pleasure of working with you, first of all, as a member, when I was a member of the National Youth Orchestra of Great Britain, and you were the beloved cello coach. You were very much the beloved cello coach. Later, I was your student at the Royal Academy of Music, and then later, after that, as principal cellist of the European Community Youth Orchestra, where you were the adored cello coach. I have so many wonderful memories of those times. Then I remember even for my first audition for a principal cello job, I called you, and that was for the principal cello position of the Royal Liverpool Philharmonic Orchestra. And then I called you actually from my grandma's house the day I was offered the principal position. And in every situation as your student, when you were a coach of the National Youth Orchestra, you gave me indispensable advice that I still cherish to this day. I remember a bunch of things that you said, and I remember exactly when. And they were incredibly important moments in my life in so many ways. And, I imagine it's the same for many, many of your students. And also, I look back sometimes those years when I must have been pretty naive, and I know I said and did some incredibly stupid things. And you must have had to suffer that. And I wonder, like, how is it you managed to be so kind and understanding and supportive of your students when they're making missteps in their life? You always just manage to just kind of gently guide me in the right direction. It amazes me still to this day.
Well, you were such a wonderful person, Paul, right from I first knew you. You must have been about, what, 14 or 15?
Yeah.
Something like that. And then you went off and everything was perfect about you. I can't understand why you're saying it wasn't, but you were such a wonderful player and wonderful person. And that's what matters.
Well, maybe I should.
We all do little things in different ways. And looking back, we all make mistakes, but at the time, they're not really mistakes. One learns from it all the time.
Well, that's true.
One learns. Yeah. And then one tries to pass it on. And, it's difficult. But you were wonderful. But thank you for saying that. It's so much appreciated.
Well, yeah. David, it's been so great to chat to you about all this stuff today. The legacy that you've left kind of all over the world with so many students is really quite phenomenal. And also just all the memories and thoughts that you have about Britten, about Rostropovich, have just been such a pleasure to listen to today. And I think it really changed the way that I think about the piece and the music. And can't wait to now play the piece. So thank you so much for your time today.
It's a pleasure. But one other important thing I forgot was that Britten studied with Frank Bridge.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So the Frank Bridge sonata was very important to Britten, as was the Frank Bridge variations, which he wrote later on.
Yeah.
So therefore that connection is fantastic.
Yeah.
The Britten sonata is absolutely perfect.
Well, I think we could probably do this whole interview again about Bridge, but I think our audience might want to hear some music now.
No, I didn't know Bridge. I'm not quite old enough for that.
No, I wasn't.
Anyway, thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you all so much for listening today. That was Benjamin Britten's Cello Sonata in C, Opus 65. Today is actually an extra special day to be playing music by Britten because today is Benjamin Britten's birthday. He was born on November 22nd, 1913. So, happy birthday, Ben. We would like to leave you today with a very short piece that sort of actually takes us back to the beginning of our program and folk songs. This particular folk song needs no introduction whatsoever, but like Ralph Vaughan Williams, Benjamin Britten also spent a lot of time walking around the English countryside, collecting and cataloging folk songs and writing these wonderfully creative piano accompaniments to these very well-known tunes. You can buy these books full of Britten's arrangements. They're like this thick. He did hundreds and hundreds of folk songs throughout his career, and they are just gems, especially the piano parts. He does just the most amazing things harmonically around these very traditional tunes. So here is one such folk song. As we've been playing this concert today, the snow has started. So those of you who are not in Canada, this is the real Canadian experience. Outside our window, I'm watching snow begin to fall, and we're meant to get something like 10 centimeters today. Maybe is that an exaggeration? Yeah. Let's say it's 10, so that the illusion of Canada being covered in snow remains. So thank you all so much for listening today, and here is a little folk song arrangement by Benjamin Britten. Thank you.